all who shall see these presents greetings. This is Ruckdog, and today I have a little something different for you all. This is Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, a new space combat game produced by Black Lab Games and published by Slitherine. This game is set in the rebooted Galactica universe and covers the events of the first Cylon War. As such, it's a bit of a prequel to the series that aired on Sci-Fi in the mid-2000s. So it's a bit of a prequel in that it covers that first Cylon War, whereas the events of the series covered the second Cylon War after the Cylons had returned from years and years of being absent. Now, I've gotten a chance to spend a little time with this game, and here are some first impressions. So first of all, and probably the most enjoyable part of the game so far has been the atmosphere. This really nails the look, feel, sound of the Battlestar Galactica rebooted universe, in my opinion. It is providing some interesting insights, I think, into that universe, and I'll cover that in a little more detail here in a second. But it definitely does capture the feel of that rebooted franchise very well, I think. Now, the tactical combat in this game is interesting. It's relatively easy to get familiar with. Players spend their time moving and selecting an action for each ship in their fleet, and this part of the turn is done in a paused state. In other words, you are selecting your movement and your action while the AI controlling the other side, or I suppose if you're playing multiplayer, the other person is doing the same thing. And then once you've gotten everything selected, you hit play, essentially, in turn, and time goes forward roughly 15 seconds or so. And during that time, the ships in your fleet execute the commands you gave them. So this is a very interesting system, I think. I've been enjoying this quite a bit. It really does kind of feel like a tabletop game, but it's capitalizing on its medium, i.e. the fact that it's a computer game allows you to leverage interfaces and the fact that there's an AI or another player, and it's easier to do hidden pre-plotted movement, etc. like that, and then use the power of the computer, essentially, to figure out how all that's going to work on the quote-unquote tabletop. In other words, to resolve all of that movement and shooting in a very fluid fashion in between the steps where you're selecting your movement and your actions. I really do like this. I wish that there was some other games out there that would take this approach, because I think it's actually pretty good, especially for a tabletop gamer like me, to see a computer game that gives that feel, but also at the same time definitely isn't so clunky that it doesn't feel like a computer game anymore, if you know what I mean. Now, the other neat thing about the tactical combat is that once the battle is complete, in the end battle screen you have an option to watch what is essentially a cinematic, an ad hoc generated cinematic of the entire battle that's based on all of the commands you gave to all of your ships, but without all of the pauses in between to select the new actions and the new movement commands. So it ends up looking like a battle scene from the show, essentially. Very, very cool. Of course, the graphics on this game are nice enough that it actually looks very, very, very neat. I've had some fun just sitting back and watching all the chaos unfold. I'll give you just a second here to look and see what it looks like on the video here. I'll stop talking for a second. Yeah, isn't that neat? Man, I think that's a really neat feature, and I'm glad they added that, because it gives you a much better feel for how the battle would progress in real time without all the stops and starts you have built into the system to figure out what you're going to do next, essentially. The other element to this game is a strategic map. So this is not just a tactical game, there's also a strategic element to it. It's a full campaign with a map of the 12 colonies, and it allows players to build new ships, deploy fleets, and choose when and where to fight a little bit. I haven't gotten a chance to do this part of the game as much, as I've only played the first couple of games of the campaign, but it seems like a workable structure for telling the game that the story's trying to tell. So I'm looking forward to playing around with this a little bit more and seeing how it gets a little more fleshed out once I get past sort of the tutorial missions. Now, speaking of the story, it's a interesting angle that we haven't really seen, at least I haven't seen, explored in the rebooted franchise yet. Basically, the start of the game has the colonies being divided, but now being faced with a new existential outside threat, i.e. the Cylons. And so now the various colonies are trying to bury the hatchet, well, bury the nukes in some case, but bury the hatchet and unite, while at the same time they're trying to fight back against this new deadly enemy. I think that's an interesting little thing there. I mean, there's definitely some parallels with real-world history. I mean, the American colonies during the American Revolution were in a somewhat similar fix. Not exactly the same thing, of course, but I mean, you can kind of see where some of the parallels are drawn there. So a few other observations here real quick. It's interesting that instead of a tutorial, as I mentioned earlier, the first few missions of the campaign act as a tutorial by providing lots of tooltips and some hand-holding. And that, I think, is effective, but the thing is, the combat is a little tricky to get the hang of, and if I made enough mistakes in the first couple of missions, they already feel like I need to go back and restart the campaign over, so I can maybe do a little better this time, so that's kind of funny. And the game is definitely a little bit slower paced, because, like I was saying earlier, you go from pause to pause when you're giving your movement and your targeting commands. And that means that there's not a lot of twitch gameplay. Now, this is not a actions per second type of strategy game. It's not really a true real-time strategy game in that respect. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, if you like a lot of twitch shooting and a lot of button mashes per second type gameplay, this game may not be your cup of tea. I like it though, because again, I'm not very good at those games. It also gives a good feel for the tabletop experience. It's a very tabletop-like experience, and so for that, it's pushing all of my buttons, I think. So I'm looking forward to getting some more time into this game. Obviously, lots more to cover in the campaign. I haven't gotten into the multiplayer yet, and I also have a skirmish option in there that I haven't explored yet, where I might actually get a chance to play the Cylon, so that's exciting. So stay tuned. I definitely plan on covering this game more on the channel. We might actually do some full-on Let's Plays. But until then, this is Ruckdog saying good luck and good hunting.